Hello and welcome to Cardio Live. I'm James Baggett, founder of Cardio Magazine, and I'm back this week hosting our live shows. Big thank you to Rebecca Chaplin for stepping in last week while I was ill. Now, today I'm joined by James Cameron, who is founder and CEO of Mission Motorsport. Welcome along to the show, James.
Thank you. Much
Thank you for joining us. So James and I got chatting on Twitter recently, where you'll find him as @TankSlider, and we were chatting about how dealers and the automotive industry can help their communities during this time of crisis, which will be something I want to touch on. James joined the Army in 1995. He served for 17 years, including 5 operational tours in the Gulf, Iraq and Afghanistan, and latterly commanded the Armoured Group in 2010-2011, for which he was mentioned in dispatches. Before I get started asking the questions, if you do have any questions for James during the show, you can send them via YouTube and I'll get around to them. They'll be fed into me. But first, James, thank you very much for joining us.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Chat a little bit about your background and why it's relevant to today's crisis.
Sure. Particularly for a car dealer magazine, you know, what relevance as an army officer got to you? The short answer is I probably haven't got a good answer for that, but you'll probably have a good answer for me by the end of it. In really simple terms, I think I've always been a petrol head, and when I was coming back from Afghanistan in 2011. I've also got a bit of a background in journalism, having done quite a lot of stuff through the various motoring magazines, and have always used that, the linkage between the two, in order to raise money for service charities. In 2011, when I came back, instead, I really wanted to do something with those whose lives had been quite profoundly affected by their military service, and to join those two together. And it led to the formation of Mission Motorsport, the Forces Motorsport charity. We use motorsport in order to help those who are hard to reach and are struggling. But like all good tools, it is just that. It's a tool in order to be able to help individuals. We run Jaguar Land Rover's Armed Forces Engagement Scheme. We help to do that. So I have a full-time member of staff who sits up at Whitley, bouncing across the sites, driving all sorts of activity that's not just about new recruits, and it's not just about recruiting. It's about an ethos of the company, a corporate culture, and also inevitably there's some great brand things that can be done against it too. Around this time last year, we launched an initiative with the help of the SMMT called Mission Automotive, there emblazoned on my sleeve, really broadening it out across a wider section of the automotive industry. And we're delighted to be helping everybody from Tesla to Toyota, who have new employees and jobs as a result of schemes that we've run, Volvo, and a host of others besides. Most recently, I think I've also found myself sort of thrust into a spotlight because a lot of the time I spent when I was in the Army was, funnily enough, doing chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear, sort of really specializing in that, including a stretch of a couple of years at Porton Down, not as an experimental subject, I should point out. But, and I think that really helped give us some of the insight into how the government goes about planning for major contingencies. We've been spending a lot of time talking to companies and helping them with their own strategies for how they find their way through that which is coming next, and helping to get people off the back foot of responding to every new restriction that is announced, and instead to get them thinking proactively on the front foot about what can they do in order to be able to change things, and how can they positively make a difference.
So there's probably a lot of people out there at the moment feeling pretty helpless, really, a lot of time on their hands, but also probably wanting to help make a difference. I mean, have you got any practical advice of what people who are running car dealers can do to help their communities?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very much on an individual level. I mean, this is the same kind of story that we're giving our beneficiaries to. There's a lot of information and there's a lot of noise out there, and you can go insane trying to take it all in. And there are people who are losing their way with that. There are 5G towers being attacked. You know, there are people who are seeing conspiracy theories and everywhere. My personal experience, the people who are standing behind the government, regardless of which government and which political flavour you are outstanding. And there is such a huge amount of work and people who are national treasures who are helping to craft the path that the government is taking to be able to get us through this safely. And to give people confidence in that is really important. If people were denigrating the British Army, were criticising our national defences, were saying that the Navy wasn't up to the job, then they would get a very strong and robust response immediately. But when you criticise politicians or scientists, it's not so obvious to people that they too are part of our national defences. And my personal experience is that there are some extraordinary people, and I'm very glad that it's them making those big decisions and those big calls, and not me, frankly. And the other bit is to help empower people to realise what they can do about it. We've all got a leading role in our own households. I mean, coronavirus is a virus. It is a dead thing. It doesn't live, and it doesn't exist in the way that a bacteria does or that we do. So it doesn't spread itself. We spread it. And to that end, this battle is not being fought by the government, and it's not being fought by the NHS. The NHS are the ones who are picking up those who've fallen. The battlefield is in our own homes and in our own behaviours. And that's why social isolation, restricting of movement, staying on top of things is so critically important. And anything that we can do on a low level, on a family level, to be able to contribute towards that is really contributing towards that battle. So particularly where you're seeing things, and we've had stuff through the door here, you're seeing excellent initiatives on Facebook, on apps like Nextdoor, which are about locals coming together in order to be able to help people in the community, to be able to help the vulnerable, to manage to stay in isolation. And for older people, I mean, that can be quite a lot around helping them to understand why things are important, and to take some of the anxiety away from them, and to help them to be able to get it right. Because if you allow them to successfully isolate, then they don't end up in the hospitals, and they don't end up contributing towards the overwhelming rush that we're all terrified of, that would take down many of our national institutions. So there's loads that we can do, and that we can be empowered to do within our own families and within our communities. And there's also, if you haven't found it yet, the NHS volunteering piece too. There are also government websites specifically for companies to offer support to. And I think a few may have uploaded some stuff, but not had immediate feedback, and then kind of lost the way a little bit with that. Those who are sat manning those lines, manning those emails, are absolutely swamped at the moment. And it's very difficult for them to sort the wheat from the chaff. So rather than sit back and think, well, that's useless, I've offered and nothing has happened, starting to think about what can we do that's putting in place all of the best practice that's actually helping on that wider piece. We've got some amazing stuff. So there's a beneficiary, a guy who left the Royal Air Force, who's medically discharged. We actually helped him into a job with British Airways through helping write his references, and he's one of many BA staff who are sat at home at the moment. But he's into his role play stuff, and at some point moved from papier-mâché to having a 3D printer sat in his spare room. He's started a thing which has gone on Facebook and is inspiring other people who've got 3D printers sat at home to make face masks, which are suitable. So these are the sort of screen face masks, a 3D printed frame with a replaceable sort of piece of acetate that then sits in front of it. He's got 200 people now across the country who are all 3D printing, and they're not trying to push things in to get NHS contracts. Those are being taken up by, the big boys. You're seeing Jaguar Land Rover producing 5,000 things a day out of the design studios at Gaydon. You're seeing Rolls-Royce motor cars who are repurposing their leather cutters to make NHS gowns. This lad has built things which he's then taken to and given to the people who are at the bottom of the NHS food chain, who are struggling to get PPE, his local doctor's surgery, the local pharmacist, the care homes. And then this is now happening on a national basis, so that these places who desperately need PPE are being given it by local community initiatives that are happening amongst them. And for companies that are thinking, how can we play our part in it? You're seeing some amazing best practice, and you're seeing lots of people offer similar things. But this is the stuff that will be remembered when we come out of the other side of it. Westway Nissan guaranteeing availability for for first responders, for NHS workers, offering a collection service and decontamination in order to help people to remain in isolation or to reduce that risk of a bit, are proactive ways for what can you do when things are at their worst, and also supporting your staff where they're sat at home or they may be furloughed, keeping them engaged in the game and giving them positive things that they can do as an NHS responder or in their local community will have a massive impact and will truly make a difference in the here and now.
I want to come on to onto leadership in a moment, but firstly, just moving back to those dealers, and we've seen plenty of dealers and automotive manufacturers come out and help. Dealers are helping in lots of different ways. We've seen them donating the capes that they use in workshops, and lots of things like that. What do you think that they can do would be the most useful right now? I mean, if there's a dealer sat at home, he's got an empty showroom, what could he do right now to really make a difference?
There are three bits to get right. It's what do we do with our people, and that starts with yourself, but it's around their staff, their employees, and to make sure that they're behaving in the right way. And then the next piece is around their customers. So how can they be a positive force for good in the community amongst those customers? And how can they support their customers who might be doing incredibly critically important things right now that we desperately need? How can they be part of that battle? And then there's the broader piece, and that's sort of looking to beyond. And I mean, Mission Automotive is a mechanism of helping people to get an armed forces engagement strategy and show that can have value to them. But at the moment, we're offering help to anyone and everyone. We've opened it out broadly in order to have conversations with people, to share best practice with them, to allow them to bounce their ideas off us. But throughout my military career, I've been pretty used to arriving in situations which are less than ideal. And you inevitably have less than the ideal set of tool sets to be able to deal with it too. The biggest thing that we can really help people to do is to shift the way that they think and to shift the way that they plan. So for too long, you sit in a state of mind where you're looking at how can we eke out what used to be for as long as we possibly can. And you have this reducing window of opportunity to trade and to do business, and to try and eke out the last parts of just pushing back against things and behaviors that, frankly, we all need to stop doing and look beyond. We're now in this we're approaching the eye of the storm as it's kind of passing us, but starting to think proactively about how do we respond on the other side of this crisis? How do we come out of this, creating the conditions that we want? And there's lots that can be done right now. The time which we have available, I mean, you're seeing people do some incredibly positive stuff with their kids and with their families. So I've even got pictures down out of the loft, which I'm discussing with my 9-year-old, which, those things have lived up there for years, but now's the time, seize the moment. This is the point at which you have the opportunity to do that. And for dealers who are not seizing the opportunity to be able to go, what does the new normal look like long-term, this time next year and beyond? What are the big trends that are happening in the industry? How can I use this tragic event, coronavirus, this global pandemic, actually as a catalyst for change within my business, and to make those positive changes so that we come out of the other side with a clear vision, a clear direction, and we're seizing those opportunities that are available to us. Now, there are those within the business, and I've already seen some of your other guests on who've got a much better view of the industry than I do. And the trends are pretty clear. The way in which we interact with others, the way in which we do our business, the way in which online is increasingly important to us, are all trends which will shape the future of automotive retail. And we have an amazing opportunity now to sit back, to have a look, to reset. And if you stop worrying about the things you can't change and instead plan for the things that you can, then it's going to help your business greatly as you emerge on the other side of it. So all of the questions which might come my way. So when's this going to end, Jim? When restrictions lift, how are they going to lift and in what order? What's that going to look like? How soon are we going to be able to get back to training? I don't have the answers to these things, and nor does anybody at the moment. So instead you go, right, well, We know that when things lift, it's not likely to be a complete lift and everything goes back to normal. There will be some things in place. So what aspects of my business can I build in and plan for so that when they tell us we can work in a certain way, that isn't news to me. I've already got a plan on the shelf because I've thought this through. I've spoken to my people. I've got in, and you all employ some brilliant people. Get them in, war game it. Talk about, if things happen in this way, how can we reach our customers? How can we do that? Use this time now to start planning for what you're going to be doing on the other side. And if you're furloughing people, that's a really weird situation. You're never going to be in the position to be able to do that again. There isn't a template for it, but regardless of whether they're furloughed, planning for them, for how they're going to return to work and how they are going to add value to a community is entirely possible within furlough, as is volunteering, as is charity work. Don't let them sit at home, gazing at their navels, feeling disenfranchised from the business and from being able to make a difference. Get them working on your behalf in order to think about how they can make positive change on the other side.
You've obviously led in some very, very difficult and the toughest of circumstances. What have you learned during those times that car dealer bosses now could take on to help inspire their teams during this tough time?
Gosh, that's a good question. It's really interesting when the balloon really goes up, as I stretch any wartime metaphor possible, I think. But there is almost a moment of quiet where people look in, and people will remember, both those who are your employed, but also your customers, about how you behave when things are at their most difficult. And the example which you set, and the mindset which you help bring to them, and the low-level compassion that you can show, because we are all feeling it. We all have this feeling of dread that's underpinning us around the changing of everything, and to show humanity in that, but a strength of purpose and a courage and a commitment that you're taking things forward and that you have a plan. By God, they're going to remember that when we come out of the other side of this. And for all of our business leaders, absolutely, this is the time when you can actually really earn your money. You can make a difference and you can make things count.
I've noticed on Twitter that you've had a bit of a war on misinformation, and you haven't pulled your punches when it comes to calling people out on that. At this time, everybody is desperate for information. I mean, it's the whole reason that we're doing these sorts of live shows and why we're putting so much effort into our website. Have you got any advice on how people take on board that information at the moment? Because people are getting bombarded. Have you got any suggestions on how and when and what they look at to get that news?
God, I mean, it's difficult, but I think I'd like to think that we're past the worst of that peak period of misinformation, because people are now beginning to see the gravity of it. And I think there's relatively few people who are out there who are going, this is all being overcooked. It's just like flu, that they're trotting out any of those things. And they're beginning to understand what a population with no natural level resistance to something which is new, the effect that can have on us. The simplest source of information to go back to is the government. Now, I no longer work for the government. We do pieces of stuff for them, and I've had some interesting times in my past when I've learnt not to conflate politics with anything that I do, frankly. And that's really difficult, because you will have people who feel quite strongly about different things, and it's cutting through that really to go to the sort of compassionate centre about it. The government is following a policy of compassion. It is following the science in order to reduce the human cost. And there are, of course, lots of so whats and what ifs out of the back of that. And you don't want the cure to be worse than the disease itself. And there are plenty of people out there making a point about, well, we can't damage the economy too much, because then we won't have jobs to go back to, and the suffering would be far worse. And that's absolutely correct. but this is a wicked problem in that there is no single correct answer to it. Any action which you take will have a downside in some way, and it's one of the frustrations in that we have a press who've been trained over years to question and to pick holes in things. And so they're seeing a government briefing and then they're seeing the press going, but so what? So what about this? But what about the effect of this? And isn't it right that we then could do the following? Which is more a media habit than it is actually constructive at the moment. Of course, there need to be checks and balances in place. We do need to have people who are looking critically at what the government is doing. But for me, with the background that I have, I'm not happy to be doing that criticism. There are some really, really bright people out there who've done it. What I'm going to do is to try and help with those behavior pieces, to cascade that as far as I can, to make things happen in the right way, and to help my audience, both our charitable audience of those who've served and their families, but also the companies that support us, that are responsible for driving the economy that we all need to be able to thrive, to be able to help them do the absolute best that they can, and to emerge out of the other side of this extraordinary times, but in as good a way as they possibly can. And that's very much where I'm driving my efforts towards making change.
Can your experiences and work at Port and Down give us any hints or clues as to how long this was going to go on for? I know it's a big question, but I'm going to ask you.
Well, I mean, I can say with absolute confidence that we've all got to become much better at planning for uncertainty than we were. The epidemiology is just fascinating, and and you can see the balance which the government is trying to strike of being able to make the changes that they can in order that this has minimum amounts of disruption. The reasons why they're making the things that they're doing and the timings that they're actually giving to us are based on a really careful weighing of a whole load of stuff. And to be honest, it depends on how well we do. So we've just had a summary weekend. If people behave in the right way, then this time of being closed down is going to be shorter than if we don't behave in the right way and we're continuing to fight a virus that is still managing to find growth by people who are behaving in the wrong way. That will extend this whole thing for us. So the more absolute that we can be, the better we can help people to maintain isolation, the better we can do lockdown, the shorter lockdown's going to be. And the more crap we are at it, frankly, the longer we're going to have to tolerate it.
You've obviously had to look after your mental health and well-being on the battlefield and those of your troops. What have you learned there that we can use now? Many people are probably struggling with being isolated at home. Is there anything any tips you can give them that will help?
I think it's much easier managing your mental state on the battlefield than it is when you're cooped up with your family in a really small space and attempting homeschooling at the same time and a whole host of other things. The big thing, I think the really big thing for me has been the importance of communication. To being able to talk to people, to share ideas with folk, to be able to connect with family members, to be able to do virtual tours of stuff online. And for us, I mean, obviously we have an event-based fundraising model, which is crucified by this. There are no events. So, this stuff over my left shoulder, from Goodwood events, not going to happen. So what have we done for our beneficiary audiences is we've taken a bunch of that and we've gone online. So, you've then got gaming rigs, Xbox, PlayStation, democratizing it as much as we can, getting it out there, and with people like 27 Racers helping us. Mission Motorsport Online is helping people enjoy a bit of escapism in the house. And if that means elbowing your 13-year-old out of the way to sit down and with a bunch of your friends try and recreate a bit of Goodwood revival on a certain console and a certain game, I mean, I'm terrible at it, I should point out. I might be a race instructor, but online I'm no great shakes compared to my 13-year-old. But it's good fun, and it gives you that little bit of release. So having structure, having order, trying to build in both times when you're working, but times when you're absolutely not and your head is into something else is really important. One of my mates who's a submariner, it kind of always brings me down with a bump with this, because he goes, look, at least you're not sharing your bunk with somebody else. And you're like, yeah, no, that is a fair point.
Well, is there anything that the industry can do, or dealers can do, to help Mission Motorsport out, or Mission Automotive? I mean, what can the industry do to help you guys?
Well, the Mission Automotive piece is, we launched it on behalf of MOD. We are just the deliverer of it, because it is non-profit making. So it's delivered by a charity in order that everybody can see exactly where it goes. It is a subscription model, but it's designed actually that there's loads of help at the beginning, and it ramps down as people go on, because you're building business behaviors in which become part of the natural way in which a company operates. And certainly for retailers and retailer groups, they may well have seen military guys who've come through. Part of our work that's been linked to a manufacturer. But for the retailers themselves to be able to have an armed forces engagement thing which is relevant to them, they all bring their own life and colour to it. But it's not just around new recruits, it's also around brand behaviour and corporate behaviours as well, and to help link them together with their community. And funnily enough, we're seeing the ones that we've got that in place with, who've got links with regional brigades, who've got links with their reservists, those are the ones who are finding some aspects of this situation we're in now easier. And God, if you would like to come and talk to us, I've got a team who are really keen in order to be able to hear from you. And if there's anything that we can do in order to help industry out there, then absolutely. And James, if I can just say for you, I think the work which you're doing, convening ideas, is tremendously important. And I'm really grateful for you as a leader within this industry, for the work which you're doing.
Thank you. That means a lot. So we sort of end on some positivity. We've done quite a lot of that in there. I mean, I've got sort of two questions really. If you were running a dealership today, what would you be focusing on now? And where is the positivity in all of this?
If you run a dealership now, you've got the most extraordinary luxury. You're not having to do lots of things that you normally have to. So take the time, have that Hamlet moment, sit back and think about what you want your business to look like, free from lots of the things that would normally restrict you. And actually, you can be bold here. This is a catalyst for change. And the model outside, the world outside is shifting. And you've got this wonderful enforced pause where you can be with your key team around you and some bright ideas coming in, planning for the future so that you emerge stronger, better, and more equipped for the world in which we're all going to find ourselves, because better days are coming. Of that, I'm certain.
James, thank you very much for your time today. I really, really appreciate you sharing so many positive thoughts with us. If you want to follow James, you can find him at Tank Slider. James, is there any other, on Twitter that is there any other way that people can get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the website is fantastic. And of course, we're also on Twitter and Facebook. There's probably an Instagram thing out there that I don't touch. On LinkedIn as well, we're there too. So there's plenty of straightforward ways to be able to find us and connect with us. And the other bit is, I think you can share a lot of best practice with each other too. So any of the networks that exist in between the groups is more important now than ever, really.
Thank you. So make sure you check out those websites for James and get in touch with him if you can help in any way. If you'd like to get involved in Car Dealer Lives, or you have any questions for me, you can email me at james@blackbullmedia.co.uk or find me on Twitter at CarDealerEd. I'm also on LinkedIn and Instagram and all the others. So hunt me down, ask me the questions, I'll do my best to answer them. Over the next few days, we've got some brilliant guests lined up once again for Car Dealer Live. It is Easter this weekend, so we will be pausing on Friday. But tomorrow I've got Will Blackshaw from Dealer Group Blackshaw's. On Wednesday, it's a team from Carwow. And on Thursday, we'll be talking to the consumer data experts from TLA, including Anton Hanley. I've published a full schedule on our website, but check back every weekday, midday, cardealermagazine.co.uk for the next live broadcast. Thanks again very much to James, and I'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye.